Hello everybody, welcome back to the Cupcake Jemma channel with me, Gemma. I'm here in the Cupcake Jemma studio with Sam and Nikki and I'm very excited. Dane's away so we can do peanutty things, which is very exciting. And if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen me bake this bake that I'm going to do for you today on my Instagram. It's a peanut butter and jam Swiss roll and you guys are going to go nuts for it. It's so good. It's the lightest feather light Genoise sponge rolled up, filled with homemade strawberry goo and the best bit, peanut creme diplomat, which is just delicious. You could eat it with a spoon. So stick with me, I'm going to show you how I do it. Very, very simple. The first thing we're going to need to do though is make some peanut creme patissiere because that's what you need to make the creme diplomat. So I'm going to start by putting 300 millilitres or grams of whole milk into a pan, along with half a teaspoon of good quality vanilla extract. And don't forget, you can get this very good quality vanilla extract from CupcakeJemma.com. So that goes in, and then that just needs to go onto the hob. So we want to bring this to steaming, so not quite boiling, but it needs to have a good steam on it. Now, while that's heating up, I'm going to get the eggy pot going. So I've got 2 large eggs. I'm going to pop them to a nice big bowl and I'm going to add 50 grams of caster sugar to that and just get it whisking straight away. And I'm just going to whisk those together until they're really well combined and the mixture will pale up quite a bit. Now while you're doing this, do make sure you're keeping an eye on your milk because you don't want it to boil over. So I've got it on a medium heat so it's not too fierce. But anyway, I've mixed my egg yolks and my sugar together and now I'm going to add my flours. So I've got a tablespoon of plain flour and a tablespoon of corn flour, and this is going to thicken it all up nicely. And just whisk that all in. All right, my milk is steamy, so take it off the heat. And we're going to temper the egg. So that just means pouring it in a thin stream into your eggs, whisking it all the time. And that's just going to bring the temperature of the eggs up a little bit, slowly, so that they don't get a shock and go scrambled. And then when it's all in, the eggs, you need to pour it back into the saucepan because obviously this is not very thick. This does not resemble custard or creme pat or anything right now. It's just more like a delicious sweet soup. So we need to thicken it up. So back onto the hob it goes. When it's on the hob, you want to keep it on a medium heat and keep stirring it with a whisk constantly. You don't want to let this sit, otherwise it will catch on the bottom and burn. After a few minutes, it should start to thicken up, at which point you can put in 50 grams of peanut butter. I prefer smooth in this case, and just whisk that in until it's all combined. Oh, lovely, it smells really delicious. And it is really delicious, and if you wanted to just leave it there, you could fill donuts with that, you could fill like a tart with that, it's so yummy. But I've got big plans for this. I'm going to turn it into creme diplomat, which is basically creme patissiere with whipped cream. It's really delicious. But we're going to need to just cool it down. I like to pass my creme pat through a sieve just to get rid of any eggy bits or lumpy bits. And I'm putting it into this tray because I want it to cool down nice and quickly because I don't want to have to wait for this thing. I want to eat it now. And when it's all in the tin, you just want to spread that out a little bit and then cover it with cling film. And it's really important to cover directly onto the surface to prevent a skin from forming. And then when it's at room temperature, you can pop it into the fridge to chill. Now, while the creme pat is in the fridge, chilling out, being all delicious, I'm going to make the Genoise sponge. So I've already prepared my tin. I'm using this. It's called a jelly roll pan somewhere. It's also called a baking tray. This is roughly 10 by 14 inches. And I've greased it and lined it on the base and the sides. Just make sure when you're doing the sides, you tuck in the corners nice and tidy so they don't kind of bake into your sponge because that will make a real mess. So that's all ready to go. So this Genoise sponge is just something it's a recipe I've been using for a few weeks since I got Sift, which is a new book by Nicola Lamb. It's really good. And it's a very technical book, and I wanted to try a couple of technical recipes. And the Genoise sponges there in that book is really good because a lot of Genoise sponges prepare the batter over a bain-marie, which is really annoying. And what she does is she heats the butter up and makes a liaison batter, which I'll show you how to do in a bit. But the first thing we're going to do is sift our dry ingredients together. So I've got 70 grams of plain flour and 35 grams of corn flour, which I'm going to sift together 2 or 3 times to really lighten them up. Now for the eggs. So in the bowl of a stand mixer fitted with the balloon whisk, you need 220 grams of eggs. That's just over 4 medium-sized eggs. To that, add 100 grams of caster sugar and then get that cranked right up to pretty much the fastest setting on the mixer. And whisk it for 5 minutes or until you have a very, very pale and very glossy mixture. Then reduce the speed down to medium and whisk for a further 3 minutes. The mixture should have at least tripled in volume at this point. Then finally, reduce the speed to the lowest setting and whisk for 10 minutes. And this is going to ensure that all the bubbles are as tiny and uniform as they can be. While your eggs are whisking, melt 45 grams of unsalted butter either in a pan or the microwave. But the main thing is that you want the butter to be around 50 degrees when you use it, so don't let it get too hot. When your eggs have had their full whisking time, transfer the mixture to a wider bowl. This just makes folding a bit easier as the bowl from the mixer can be a bit narrow and deep. Grab your sieve back and sift over the flours and fold it in carefully, either with a big metal spoon or a spatula. You can do this in 2 stages or just 1 if you're a bit more confident with your folding. Once that's all incorporated, take a small spoonful of the mixture and put it into a bowl with the melted butter, and then you need to whisk those 2 together. This is called a liaison batter, and it will just make it a little easier to incorporate the butter into the batter without having to work it too hard. Pour that back into the main batter and then fold it in carefully with your spatula or your spoon. And once it's all smooth and combined, you need to pour that batter into the prepared tin, gently level the top with a palette knife, and then the really important bit, you need to drop it onto the counter from about 20 centimetres high. This is just going to get rid of any of those really big bubbles. It's exciting, isn't it? Now my oven's been preheating to 170 degrees C. It's a fan assisted oven and I'm going to bake this for 15 to 18 minutes. And you're going to want to check it with your finger. So just tap it on the top, and if it's nice and springy, it's ready, but also get a little toothpick or a skewer in there as well, and if it's clean, it's ready. Oh, it's very, very spongy and lovely, and this is going to be a really nice light sponge. But while it's still warm, we need to get it into shape. And actually this sponge itself is quite forgiving, so if you didn't want to roll it up in advance of making your Swiss roll, it would still be fine because it's really nice and soft. But I always like to train it so that it remembers what to do when it comes to rolling time. So I have a clean tea towel here and I have baking paper. You don't have to use baking paper. You could just do this directly onto the tea towel if you want. But I'm going to sprinkle it all over with some caster sugar. You could use granulated sugar if you don't want to use caster sugar or whatever you've got. And this is going to not only give it a lovely sugary coating, but also it's going to help it to prevent it from sticking to the paper or the tea towel, if that's what you've used. And now, this is when I make a real mess, because I'm going to turn the cake out, inverted, so upside down, onto this sugar, and it makes it go everywhere. So sorry everyone, to the sides. Here we go. Now the tin's still quite hot, so I'm going to use my oven gloves again just to lift the tin off and then carefully peel back the greaseproof paper. And another thing I like to do to ensure that I have a nice, neat and tidy bottom on my Swiss roll is just to cut a little bit of the end off. So at an angle, using a nice sharp serrated knife, I'm just going to slice the corner off at a sort of, I think this is like a 45-degree angle. And what this is going to do is it's going to help the Swiss roll up nicely so that you have a nice bottom, not a lumpy one. So now I'm going to spin it round, and I've got like a bit of excess tea towel here. I'm going to kind of roll that in so that it's got a little bit of a sort of guide for the middle bit. And then really gently, with the tea towel and the paper inside the roll, so this sometimes confuses people, roll it up just gently. You're not trying to get it super duper tight. Don't forget it's really warm. So you don't want to squish it too much. And then roll it until it's all rolled up. And we're going to leave that to cool. It won't actually take very long because it's very sort of airy. And we're going to get on with making the creme diplomat. It's nearly time for assembly, and I've got my creme pat here, which is, as you can see, nice and set. It's almost jelly-like, which means that before you use it, you do have to give it a little bit of a whiz or a whisk just to smooth it out. And we're not going to use all of this with our creme diplomat. It's just that it's a bit difficult to make a smaller amount of creme pat. So the good news is you can actually freeze this. Just freeze it in an airtight container, and then when it's defrosted, just whisk it up and then it's ready to go. But for now, I'm going to use about half of it, pop it into a bowl on a digital scale because we want to weigh out exactly how much we're putting in. So I've got 235 grams of my creme pat, so I'm going to weigh out 235 grams of double cream. I mean, what's 1 gram amongst friends? So now, because my creme pat is a little bit, well, wibbly wobbly jelly-like and not very smooth, I'm just going to loosen it up with a whisk. You could do this with an immersion blender if you wanted to as well. We're just going to knock out some of those lumpy bits. Just pop that to one side for now, because now we need to turn our attention to the cream. Now, I am a big fan of taking it easy with cream. I normally like to do this by hand with a hand whisk. But I'm going to use an electric whisk today because actually it's quite a lot of cream and that would just take forever. And I'm hungry, I want my lunch. So we're going to get this cream to a sort of floppy to soft peak consistency. So when it starts to look a bit floppy, I recommend you take your electric whisk out and just finish it by hand. Now don't forget also that whipped cream does sort of continue to firm up even after you've stopped whisking. So stop before you think it's ready. This is just right for me, wibbly wobbly peak. And now we need to get it into the creme pat. So we're going to do this in a couple of stages. I'm going to put a little bit into the body of the main body of the creme pat just to loosen it up a little bit. And I don't want to necessarily be super gentle with this. I just want it all to mix in. That's the main thing. And then with the rest of the cream, I'm going to fold that in carefully in 2 stages. Right, that's ready. And actually, my sponge is cool, so I think we can get on with assembly, but we're missing jam. Now, you can use store-bought jam if you want. If you're really going old school American vibes, you could use grape jelly. We don't really have that in the UK, so I'm going to use goo, actually, because I wanted to make all of this myself and I didn't have time to make jam. But I did take Eden strawberry picking at a local farm at the weekend, and I tell you, that girl can pick some strawberries. So we have about 3 kilos of strawberries at home. I've put most of them in the freezer, but I did save some for this. So making goo, you've seen us do it a million times. It's really simple. All you need to do is, with your fruit of choice, put 200 grams of fruit into a small saucepan, along with 60 grams of caster sugar, and just get that onto a medium heat. Once it starts to macerate and get all juicy, you can even get in there with a potato masher if you want, which I find particularly useful for strawberries because they are really juicy. And then just over a medium heat, stirring it occasionally, just let that bubble away until it's really, really nice and thick and jammy. Then once it's ready, while it's still hot, you want to pass that through a sieve just to get rid of any lumpy bits or seeds that you don't want, and then just leave that to cool. And then you'll end up with this lovely, jammy, gooey, fruity yumminess. And actually, strawberry goo is one of my favourites. It fills the house, or the studio, with just the most amazing smell. So I've got my goo, I've got my creme diplomat, I've got my sponge, but he's all rolled up. Let's unravel him and see what's going on in there. Hopefully he'll remember what he's supposed to do a bit later. Lovely. Now that's going to have really helped prevent it from cracking when it comes to the roll. The first thing I'm going to do is give him a good spreadage with some strawberry goo. And then, of course, we're going to follow that with our Creme Diplomat. Now I'm going to blob it on, but I am going to just put a tiny bit more at this end than the rest of it, like when I spread it, just so that the center of the Swiss roll has a little bit more filling in it. Nice. This is looking real good, but it's not rolled yet, so this is the bit that stresses a lot of people out, but it's absolutely fine. You just need to use the greaseproof paper to guide you. So I've spun it round. Then using the greaseproof paper, pick up the end closest to you and start rolling. The first bit can be a little bit tricky, but make sure you're getting a nice inside curl on that first bit. Then use the greaseproof paper to just push the sponge away from you and make it as tight as you can. Finish the roll with the edge that you cut at the bottom. So once it's in a nice tight roll, you can then roll it back up into the tea towel, and that's just going to keep it in its special, very tight roll shape. And then pop it onto a tray, because it needs to chill before we slice it, because obviously all that cream in there might be a little bit sloppy, especially if it's a bit hot out there. So pop it into the fridge for at least an hour, and then we can get slicing. Guys, it looks so pretty. I mean, it actually looks a little bit messy now because I haven't cut the end off, but I promise you, inside it's gonna look lush. So yeah, speaking of which, I've got a nice sharp knife. I actually did sharpen this knife just a minute ago, just to get that edge off because we don't want any raggedy ends. But hopefully this will reveal the amazing, oh it does, the amazing scroll. Look at that, beautiful. I love it. Isn't it great? Got a nice old swirly whirl in there. I mean, it could be a little bit rounder, but you know what? It's all right. And if you get yours round, make sure you take a picture for proof and put it on Cupcake Jemma. Put it on Cupcake Jemma's Instagram. Cupcake Jemma, that's me. Anyway, enough of that. I want to eat it because it just is so soft and squishy and smells amazing. That's so lush. Because the genoise sponge is really nice and light, but it's still quite rich because we've used butter in there and like the whole egg. Oh, it's really good. And the jam, the strawberry jam, a la Eden, my little baby, baby girl strawberry picker, that is delicious. I mean, you could do this with any jam and maybe, you know, if you're in America, use grape jam. We don't get that kind of grape here. What are they called? They're called Concord grapes or something? I don't know, but we don't get them here and it's really annoying because that grape flavour is so good and it is amazing with peanut butter. So if you have access to that, make your jam with those. But this is great, I love it. The Creme Diplomat is lovely and light and not overly peanutty. So you've got some really nice subtle flavours all sort of melding together and it's just lovely and a really nice, what is it? Like a treat? You could have this for pudding. You could have this on your day off. You could have this for no reason at all. So make sure you bake this. Let us know how it goes. If you're a member of the Bake Club, you can put it in the Bake Chat there. And if you're not a member yet, then hop on board, guys, because not only is it a great place to get early access to stuff and extra bits behind the scenes, you can also basically direct message me if you're worried about something you've baked. I will help you, hopefully. And it's just really fun. Anyway, I need to have a little moment with my peanut butter and jam Swiss roll, so I'm gonna have to say bye-bye. I said bye-bye, go away. Are you still here? Get out of it.